The moment we've all been, sort of curious about is finally here. We finally have an answer for the only question everyone has about the 4th season of The Witcher. How did Liam Hemsworth do as Geralt? Before we talk about Liam's actual performance, we have to break down how The Witcher handled the transition from the first 3 seasons with Henry Cavill to the 4th season without him. Would you believe us if we told you that they reshot a bunch of scenes with Liam and haphazardly threw them into the first 10 or so minutes as a sort of recap/sleight of hand trick? Yeah, it's kinda weird. There's a whole opening scene where we see an old guy reading a story about the Butcher of Blaviken to a bunch of kids. It's basically a retelling of the opening scene of Season 1 where Geralt slays that spider monster in the bog. In Cavill's scene, Geralt notices a wounded deer afterwards and offers some words of reserved pity before finishing it off. In Liam's scene, there's no deer. He just gets a little smug after the kill and says,
"Not the worst."
Then a little girl chides the old man for getting the story wrong and sets things straight, which starts with Geralt slaying a bunch of other spider monsters before he can leave the bog, as if they're trying to one-up Cavill's Geralt to make sure we know that Liam's embodiment of the character is even more badass. After that, she gets into some of the main points of the series: Geralt and Yennefer's fiery romance, his destiny-fueled relationship with Ciri, the big fight with Vilgefortz, and Ciri bailing and assuming the name of her dead ancestor, Falca. But that's it. So what seems on the surface to be a half-assed recap is really just a decent attempt to trick our brains into being okay with Liam in the white-haired wig. If you feel like you need an actual recap, you'll probably want to watch the one we did here at Looper. No matter how you feel about that opening, we can all probably agree that it's jarring to see Liam slaying monsters and jobbers instead of Cavill.
What?
Nothing.
But jarring doesn't mean Liam does a bad job. He's actually pretty convincing as Geralt, all things considered. Seriously, just look at him. If you squint your eyes a little, it's hard to tell the difference. He has the same build, he's able to form those same sardonic facial expressions, he really owns a choreography and stays true to Geralt's fighting style. And perhaps most importantly, he nails the voice and overall delivery.
But if I see your face again, I will split you open and watch you bleed.
Sure, he might not be able to emote as well as Cavill or tap into that specific well of soulfulness he brought to the character, but that's water under a far-off bridge at this point. Liam's who we're stuck with, and he does just as well as anyone else with a chiseled chin and impressive physique would have if they were given the same opportunity. But what about the deeper aspects of his character? Is it weird to see Liam interacting with all of the actors who starred alongside Cavill in the previous seasons? Is there an authenticity to it despite the glaringly obvious switch? Honestly, we think he pulls it off for the most part. Liam's Geralt has surprisingly believable chemistry with Yennefer. When he's hanging out with Jaskier, it seems like they haven't missed a beat. The same goes for his interactions with Milva. When she gives him a hard time about needing to take it easy after getting wounded, it connects us to the end of Season 3 when she initially helps him heal before heading off to find Ciri. And when Geralt is captured and ends up tied to Dijkstra's chair, it still feels like a natural continuation of their previous run-in.
The lone wolf isn't alone anymore, which is how I know you'll break.
And of course, when it comes to his interactions with new characters like Lawrence Fishburne's Regis or Danny Woodburn's Zoltan, it's impossible to see anyone other than Liam's version of Geralt.
Something doesn't feel right.
You're right, Geralt. Despite our reserved praises, it's impossible to ignore the giant monster in the room, the writing. No matter how hard Liam might have tried to successfully embody a character like Geralt, there's only so much an actor can do if the script itself is poorly written. At some points, it almost feels like they purposefully wrote lines that would take us out of the experience and remind us of some of Liam's past roles, like Gale in The Hunger Games or Billy in The Expendables 2.
Let's fucking move!
Granted, the writing for the first 3 seasons of The Witcher isn't top tier either, and you can only expect so much from a fantasy series that will never come close to Lord of the Rings or the good old days of Game of Thrones. But still, even if you lower the bar in your mind, there are plenty of lines to cringe at.
And leading our party, the Witcher who suffers pangs of conscience.
I wouldn't be here without you. All of you.
And don't even get us started on the plotting or that weird animated segment that comes out of nowhere and totally disrupts the vibe. All for the sake of giving us Regis's backstory, Kill Bill style. That's a subject for a whole other video. Another thing that has an impact on Liam's portrayal of Geralt is his real-life persona and how it differs quite a bit from Henry Cavill's. As most of his fans know, Cavill is kind of a huge nerd in numerous different ways. For instance, beyond being a longtime fan of the Witcher books and video games, he's also obsessed with a miniature wargame Warhammer 40k, which plenty of interviewers love to give him a good-natured hard time about.
You painted this.
I did.
And then you play with it?
You paint many of them.
He even loves it so much that he's been trying for quite some time to get an entire Warhammer Cinematic Universe thing going, which is now officially in the works and will eventually premiere on Amazon. And beyond that, he nerds out over steaks and building PCs, among other things. Liam, on the other hand, isn't much of a nerd at all, and he isn't as big of a Witcher fan as Cavill is. As he said on Live with Kelly and Mark, not long after he'd signed on to be the new Geralt.
I hadn't seen the TV show, and I hadn't read the books, but I'd played the video game like 10 years ago or something.
As far as his hobbies go, the most prominent of them seems to be surfing. And if you peruse his Instagram, which is pretty bare compared to many celebs, it doesn't seem like he gets up to much else besides working out and hanging with his bros, which is totally fine. There isn't a steadfast rule about needing to be a huge fantasy fan if you're wanting to take up the helm of a beloved fantastical character. It still helps though, especially in a situation like Liam's where he's replacing an actor in the middle of a show's run. That being said, it could very well be part of why so many people were quick to dunk on him when they found out about him stepping in for Cavill. All in all, the important thing to remember is that if you're not digging the continuation of The Witcher, Liam Hemsworth isn't the person to blame.
This wound is much deeper than that, literally.
We all know that Liam's career hasn't followed the same trajectory as his brother Chris. He doesn't have that Marvel money to fall back on. So, when a role like this is offered up, you can't blame the guy for jumping into the mix faster than Geralt would jump into a freshly prepared bath. And even if the role came with baggage, it still seems like he was plenty stoked about it for the right reasons. After it became official, he took to Instagram to write, in part, "Henry, I've been a fan of yours for years and was inspired by what you brought to this beloved character. I may have some big boots to fill, but I'm truly excited to be stepping into the Witcher world." Cavill too took to Instagram to make the announcement and congratulate Liam for taking over in his stead. He wrote, in part, "As with the greatest of literary characters, I've passed the torch with reverence for the time spent embodying Geralt and enthusiasm to see Liam's take on this most fascinating and nuanced of men. Liam, good sir, this character has such a wonderful depth to him. Enjoy diving in and seeing what you can find." Kinda nice, right? Well, at least they tried. And don't forget, it was Cavill who ultimately chose to step down after Season 3 came to an end. This wasn't a situation where Netflix cancelled the show due to low viewership or anything like that. At least part of what seems to have happened is that Cavill, who is a big fan of the original source material, started to have disagreements with the showrunners. These range from big things, like the overall direction of the narrative, to more granular stuff like Geralt's dialogue. Following the success of Season 1, he started sending his ideas to showrunner Lauren Hissrich. She told The Hollywood Reporter, "Everybody came out of Season 1 laughing and loving Geralt's fuming, but Henry was saying that when you read the books, you spend a lot of time in Geralt's head. So how can we put that on the page?" It's likely that his recommendations often fell on deaf ears, especially when you consider how past writers on the show have gone on record in the past to say that they were not fans of the books or the games. Beyond that though, the fact that Cavill has other future roles on his plate is also a potential reason for his departure. Like we mentioned before, he has that enormous Warhammer 40k project in the works, and we all know how hard he's been working to bring that to fruition. There was also the whole thing where he thought that he was going to be reprising his role as Superman, only to have David Corenswet step in and become the face of James Gunn's new vision for the DCU. Oof. He's also set to star in a Highlander reboot. So yeah, it's all been a huge mess for a while, and it's not fair at all to blame Liam for just doing his job. It was recently announced that Season 5 will be the final season of The Witcher, so we'll just have to wait and see if the showrunners have what it takes to bring Geralt's story to a somewhat satisfying conclusion.